Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, where we dive deep into the latest global trade developments. Today, we're discussing a major decision that could reshape the electric vehicle (EV) market in Europe. On Friday, the European Union took a significant step by voting to impose duties on Chinese electric vehicles. Why is this happening? What's at stake for both Europe and China? Stick around as we explore the impact of this decision, the politics behind it, and the future of the EV industry. Electric vehicles are not just a means of transportation. They're at the center of a trade dispute between two of the world's biggest economies, the EU and China. Over the last few years, China has rapidly increased its exports of EVs to Europe, gaining a significant share of the market. In fact, Chinese-built EVs jumped from 3.9% of the European market in 2020 to a staggering 25% by September 2023. This growth is largely due to government subsidies that Chinese manufacturers receive from Beijing. These subsidies include everything from cheap land for factories to below-market costs for essential materials like lithium, used in batteries. While Chinese EVs have become more affordable in Europe, many believe these subsidies give Chinese manufacturers an unfair advantage, allowing them to undercut European prices and threaten local industries. European automakers, already facing stiff competition, are being squeezed out by these low-cost imports. That's why the EU has voted to impose anti-subsidy duties in an effort to protect its own market and level the playing field. The vote to impose duties was led by the European Commission, which manages trade for the EU's 27 member countries. The goal? To address the impact of China's subsidies on European markets. If no agreement is reached between Brussels and Beijing by the end of October, the duties will come into force on October 31st. These duties are quite significant, ranging from 17% on cars from companies like BYD to as high as 35.3% on vehicles exported by China's state-owned automaker, SAIC. It's important to note that not every EU country supported the decision. Germany, Europe's largest economy and home to major automakers like Volkswagen and BMW, voted against the duties. Hungary also opposed them. German auto industry leaders have expressed concerns that these tariffs could spark a trade conflict with China, which could ultimately harm European car manufacturers, many of whom rely on Chinese-made parts and materials. The fear is that these tariffs will escalate tensions and lead to retaliation from China, possibly hurting Europe more than it helps. So, how has China reacted? Unsurprisingly, they're not happy about the EU's decision. China's Commerce Ministry strongly opposes the duties, calling them unfair, non-compliant, and unreasonable protectionist practices. From China's perspective, these tariffs are a direct threat to its growing dominance in the EV market. Chinese officials are pushing back, and negotiations are ongoing to find a solution before the October 31st deadline. China has a lot to lose here. Its rapid growth in the EV sector has been one of the country's success stories, not just economically but also in terms of advancing green technology. If the duties are imposed, China will have to either lower its prices or risk losing access to the lucrative European market, which could have a domino effect on the global EV industry. But Europe also has much at stake. The EU is trying to balance two competing goals: protecting its own EV industry and maintaining good relations with China, one of its biggest trading partners. The European auto industry is massive, employing 2.5 million people directly and 10.3 million indirectly. If Chinese EVs continue to flood the market, some fear that Europe will struggle to produce its own green technology and could lose jobs across the auto sector. Brussels argues that it needs to act now to safeguard the future of Europe's auto industry and protect it from unfair competition. But critics, like Germany's Auto Industry Association, worry that these duties could harm European companies more than they help. If China retaliates, it could impact not just EVs, but a range of industries that rely on trade between the two economies. So what's next? The EU and China are in the midst of negotiations. Talks have already been held between Valdis Dombrovskis, the EU Commissioner for the Economy, and China's Trade Minister Wang Wentao. Technical teams from both sides are due to meet again on October 7th. Any solution proposed by China will have to be compatible with World Trade Organization rules, addressing the EU's concerns about unfair subsidies and ensuring transparency. If a deal is reached, the duties could be avoided, but if no agreement is made, those tariffs will kick in at the end of October. Either way, this dispute is set to shape the future of the global EV market and potentially trigger a larger trade conflict between the EU and China. As the deadline approaches, all eyes will be on Brussels and Beijing to see if they can find common ground. Will Europe's push to protect its auto industry lead to a trade war, or can both sides find a solution that avoids escalation?